Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. I screwed that up this time. This is take 2, by the way. Today we're drawing Supergirl. This is, as I say, this is take 2 because the first time the computer soft locked and I lost the footage. So you're not exactly going to be seeing a clean start here. I did a little bit of the details, but I didn't get that far in, hence why I'm even bothering to do a second attempt. If I'd gotten any further, I would have just nixed it there and then. But, we're pretty early, all things considered, so, I'm willing to give it another go. But yeah. So, today, we're talking about posing. We've got some background stuff, but realistically speaking, I'm going to forget a lot of the stuff I went over last time, so I'm going to try and do it properly. But, I have problems that I'm going to have to be dealing with here of memory, because I've already done this. But anyways, I'll roll the intro and then we'll get on with it. I'll show you what I have, what I've, partly started. So, we'll see. Anyways. Alright, this is where we're at. As I said, I didn't get super far in, but I got far enough. I got a little bit in when everything's crashed. But not super far. I got about, again, I would say about a third of the way through the details. But, so realistically speaking, as I said before, if I'd gotten any further than this, I probably would have just said, you know what, no, it's not worth doing. Because the details phase is like more than half the video normally. So this is the thing, I'd normally say, well, if I've lost almost the entirety of the details, that would be it. But anyways, I'll sort of try and rattle off the stuff that I was trying to remember. So posing, I don't know why I pronounced it like that, was the main thing that I wanted to go over. So realistically speaking, I keep saying that, I'm getting stuck in a bit of a loop here. The thing with the posing here is that this is a bit of a Frankenstein job, as per usual. Took a few pieces of reference, sort of sandwiched them together in a way that worked. Design-wise, there's a few alterations here and there, i.e. Stuff like this sort of centerpiece here. Sometimes it's flat, sometimes it's pointed. It's just a thing of where it's preference based on the artist. It's not necessarily anything new. It's just I decided to point it. Some artists make it flat, some artists have it pointed, some artists have it short, some artists have it thick. I prefer thick, I prefer pointed. So that's where I went with that. The other thing, which this is sort of a mistake, but I think I might keep it, is the skirt is a little longer than it would normally be. Her skirt normally ends about halfway down the thigh, whereas here I put it down like pretty much at the end of the thigh. Ordinarily it would end up maybe about here, whereas here it ends like down there. It ends like right at the top of the boots. So I would have normally left it a little higher than that. But yeah. So posing is not just how the character is, literally posed, i.e. here she's obviously got her arms up and then she's a big smile and all this stuff. However, posing does not just mean how a character is literally physically acting out and how their limbs are positioned. It's also their tilt. How are their clothes interacting with the pose? So here I'm going to be talking a little more about how the clothes interact with the pose. And the hair too. How all these little bits and pieces interact with the pose. So here, for example, she's supposed to be flying forward, not like super fast, but she's flying forward. Hence why the cape is being pushed back, but it's not like completely, it's not like straight back like that, it's sort of fluttering back. Because if she was flying really fast, then it'd be going straight back. But the idea is she's not going like super fast. So that's the thing, it's not like going straight back. Same with the skirt. The skirt, if she was going super fast, you'd be able to see more definition of the legs in it because it'd be pushing against her. But it's still, she's still moving forward, so it's kind of hugging the legs slightly. And then the hair, I decided to not really do much with in terms of, how it's being posed. It's not like flying around crazy or anything like that. I might consider making the skirt a little shorter. I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure. But yeah, so when it came to the hair, I just decided, I think it looks a little better whenever it's just not really doing anything. And like I said the first time I did this, there is a sort of 40s-ness to this. I think it partly comes down to the sort of the meeting of the hair and then the skirt. The skirt's very long, and then you've obviously got the sort of very sort of the hair, which is in these sort of specific shapes and all this stuff. But yeah, in terms of that was just sort of, I suppose, a happy accident, because I mean, I sort of gave her similar hair shapes to how I shaped Superman's hair, where it's got this sort of indented curve along the top, and then that sort of then obviously has these perfect curves, is sort of how I do that, which is the same way I draw Superman's hair. It has all these little nice curves and stuff in it. So it's those sort of same things. Oh, another little design thing that's maybe worth noting is the end of the sleeves. The sleeves is something that sort of comes up every now and then with Supergirl's design, and it's consistently inconsistent in that sometimes the sleeves end at the bottom of the palm, sometimes they end halfway through the palm, sometimes they end at the back of the palm. And then sometimes they join at the ring, or at the middle finger, I mean to say, and then sometimes again they just cut off normally at the end of the wrist, which is normally how that would be. Like with Superman, that cuts off the end of the wrist. Sometimes it rides up a little on the palm, but not very much. But I decided, just to make things look a little bit more interesting, that it would wrap around the middle finger. I don't think her actual S is any different to how I would normally do it for Superman. I think it's mostly the same. It's just obviously the shape of the chest is different, so it's going to look a little bit different. And also we're at an angle here where with Superman and Bizarro, those were at slight angles, but not quite so much. I talked in more detail in my first go around, but obviously, since that recording's lost, I don't remember now what I was saying. I don't remember what exactly I'm losing. But yeah, largely the design is mostly the same. This is sort of at the confluence of two different designs, sort of the Woman of Tomorrow design, except this has the pointed centerpiece, where that has a flat one. And then the sort of World's Finest design. However, that obviously has the red along the top as well, which I'm not much of a fan of. I have it tuck into the top of the suit, and then I decided to have the top of the suit be the collarbone, where again that also changes. Sometimes it is above the collarbone, sometimes it's below the collarbone. It just sort of changes. It depends. I think I've done this the same way I do with Superman, of where it is the collarbone. I don't think with Superman I have it below the collarbone, but I don't remember, to be honest with you. Now, the other thing which I talked a little bit about is how I changed how I do. This is just sort of an experiment, I suppose, with how I do the chest shapes. I ordinarily do the chest shapes for female characters in such a way of where I draw it. This is actually the same way I do it with male characters, where I just basically draw the base sketch as though the character is basically naked, and then everything else goes on over that. Hence why whenever I'd be doing a character, you wouldn't necessarily be seeing the definition of the middle of the chest, even on a male character usually, unless they're wearing something which would obviously define that part of the chest. Here, obviously, it's the same sort of deal with a lot of female characters. It's the same thing where I just put the seam underneath, much the same with or the folds underneath, the same way I would with a male character. But I've just decided to sort of leave it here, of where I just sort of make it easier for myself, draw it that way in the first place. And I think it looks a little better that way. Here at least. It's an experiment. I might see how this works. I might not continue to do it. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think, because it is very, very warm in here, I'm willing to just, carry on. And see if I can get further in the details than last time. Because last time, obviously I didn't get that far. But, this was still like nearly an hour's worth of work. So yeah. I think I'm willing to get back to it and, see if I can actually finish this thing. If you're seeing this video, we're in the good timeline, but if you're not, well, you're not seeing it. So, anyways, I'll be back, provided things work out, to do the colors after I've done these details completely this time. So yeah, anyways, I'll carry on. Alright, we got the details done. Now it's time for the colors. So yeah, there wasn't really much left of the details to do, but you know, such is the nature of these things. But yeah, the colors here, we're going to be keeping pretty simple. I think I might end up going with slightly lighter tones than how I do Superman. So for example, the blue I think would be the one that would be reasonably lighter. I'm not going to use my colors for Superman as reference really on this. I'm just going to sort of pick them more so based on what I'm trying to get out of this. So we'll see what I manage. But yeah, I'm not going to be using the same red, yellow, or blue for Superman. I'll just sort of, I'll try and pick ones which just feel appropriate more so than based on whether or not I used them last time. Now the background is going to be blue, so I'm going to try and pick a blue that doesn't necessarily conflict with the one that we've got going on Supergirl. However, because we're going to be trying to do a bright sunny day sort of blue sky, that'll mean it'll be darker at the top and then lighter at the bottom. So, I mean, it's sunny now, so I can literally look outside as reference. Yeah, so I'm going to need to pick a vivid blue for the top and then a light blue for the bottom. More or less something like that. I'll probably do that during this section, so I don't need to really bring up much about that. And then I'll do my thin sort of wispy clouds as I'm going towards the end, whenever I'm in the painted shading, which is of course the next section. But yeah, I think for the most part, this shouldn't be too bad. One thing of note is that based on... Oh, the bin men are around. Based on what I've got in terms of the references that I've been using, as I mentioned, Woman of Tomorrow versus and The World's Finest. In both of those, Supergirl has a few sort of consistent coloration things. For example, she usually has darker lips in those, so I'll probably do something like that. Whereas, yeah, I might normally have not done that. I might have probably gone for something lighter. Or more natural, but darker is normally the color that they use, so I'll use that as my reference. And I'll probably go for something like that. But yeah, I suppose before the noise of the bin men becomes too loud, I will continue. I'll just do these colors and then I'll be back to doing the painted shading. But first I'm going to need to open up my reference. Hopefully Chrome isn't the thing that causes the computer to crash this time. But you know, we can just pray if that doesn't happen. Anyways, I'll carry on. Alright, that's our colours done. Now it is time for the painted shading, and I'm going to try and talk my way through this as quickly as humanly possible so that I don't start to liquefy before... Oh, I forgot to turn my light on. Before the next section starts, because it is incredibly warm. So yeah, what do I have to introduce? Yeah, so I kept things reasonably simple. I kept all the colors nice and bright because I want to sort of, I feel like that's more appropriate to the, I suppose the color scheme we've got going on here is everything's kind of bright. I kept the dark lips. I was sort of thinking about changing that color, but I think it's fine for the most part. So what else do I need to talk about? Yeah, so I introduced a little bit more of the yellow to the boots. That's something from the Woman of Tomorrow design. Because largely the boots are sort of just entirely red and that's it. So yeah, normally that's the case of where it's just, yeah, normally just entirely red, no other sort of anything to it than that. But yeah, so yeah, I was sort of thinking now I'm gonna have to try and be very careful about how I do the painted shading on the cape, because it interacts with the skirt, which should be lighter. It interacts with the boots, which should be a little lighter than that, and all this other stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna need to be careful about that. Not sure about the light direction here still. I think I'm gonna have it be mostly pretty neutral. You know what I'm actually gonna do? I'm gonna turn this down to 60% as the painted shadings opacity. Normally I have it at 70 just for context, so that whenever you still get it kind of dark. But I'm gonna go for 60 this time just to make it a little subtler, because this is obviously supposed to be a bright sunny day. It's about to rain, I think, right now, so I can't really use that for reference anymore. But yeah, so that's sort of the thing I'm going for here, where I'll be a little subtler than it might normally be, and I've sort of got an idea of what I'm going to do in terms of color palette. I've got another sort of odd one. It's going to be very like kind of soft and neutral is sort of what I'm going for, where it's going to be sort of red and blue tones. So it'll have all the tones here, obviously. The yellow is probably the only thing that'll get kind of muted. But yeah, I've sort of had a look for another color palette, much like I did with the Jubilee one last time. And yeah, so I think that should work for the most part. But yeah, I think largely I'm going to try and go for some sort of subtler shading in terms of painted shading, more so than normal. Normally I have a sort of a deeper, darker kind of shading tone normally. That also means I'm probably going to keep the detailed shading a little lower as well. I normally have that on 30%. That'll probably be 25 or 20 now in this version of events. So I think most likely I'm probably going to have the darker parts over here, because that just sort of makes sense, I think. Especially where the darker parts are. I think mostly for the hair is the reason why I'm going to do that. And for the sake of getting the light line on this side of the face, because that'll look better. Generally, if it's on this side, because if the light line's over here, it's going to get sort of obscured by a few different things. So I think that makes more sense, just in terms of kind of keeping things more visually clean. I think that makes sense. So yeah, anyways, I'll do this painted shading, and I'll do the clouds and everything as well. I'll just get a smoke brush for that, and then I'll be back to do the detailed shading, the light line, and then that'll be us. So yeah, I'll get on with this, and hopefully it'll be done soon, because it's very warm. So yeah. Alright, that's our painted shading, and I did the background as well. I lowered the opacity on the background, and the opacity on the painted shading is a lot lower than normal. It's 10% lower than normal. It's 60% a piece, and the detailed shading that I have just prepared to do is going to be 25%. So it'll be a little subtler, is the sort of intention that I'm going for here, at least, so that you get a little bit of a softer sort of temperature to the way things are going. Because so far we've got a very warm temperature on our character, but obviously everything surrounding her is a lot cooler in tone. So I'm going to try and aim for something that is about, you know, a little, that equalizes that a little bit. But yeah, we've still got a bit of a sunsettier tone to our colors here anyways. But we'll see what we can do with that in the gradient maps. I don't want to talk for too long here, because I am dying from the heat. It is incredibly hot. So yeah, oh, geez. So yeah, realistically, there's nothing too crazy I have to talk about or introduce here. The blue turned a little weird and yellow. That's sort of where the primary amount of temperature is coming from with our blue here, in terms of the kind of warmer temperature of everything. It sort of comes in the blue because everything's a little skewed towards yellow in terms of the lighter color. But yeah, anyways, I will. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I really need to introduce. The background is nice and simple. A little bit of sort of hazy cloud cover. That's all there is. That's all there needs to be. I even lowered the opacity because I thought it was a little too much. To be honest with you, I could have probably gotten away with no clouds at all. But I chose to put in some just for the sake of having something. But yeah. So, anyways, I will do this detailed shading and the light line. Then I'll be back to do gradient maps and wrap up. And I will try and burn through that as well because I am incredibly warm in here. Anyways, I'll carry on. And then I'll be back to wrap up. So yeah, anyways. Alright, that is us done basically. That's the detailed shading, the light line. I turned the detailed shading down to 20% because it was on 25% before, but I turned it down to 20 because I think it looks a little bit softer and a little bit more subtle on 20 because I don't need it to be super, over the top. I don't need it to be super detailed or crazy. Well, I need it to be detailed, obviously. That's the sort of central conceit of doing it in the first place. But I don't need it to be too intense, is the word I was looking for. Same deal with the light line. I didn't sort of go too far in on the body with it. This arm does have it, as you can see. The arm on the left does have it, but it's very thin. So that's sort of what I did, was that I kept it sort of thick on the parts which should have a little bit more, definition, such as the parts which are further along, further to the side, and then stuff like, like the skirt, and then the boots. Those have a little bit more going on. Same with this sort of gold piece there. It's alright. Right, I need to have a think about my color palette here because I need to set up my gradient map. So I need to do my 3 gradient maps. I might only do 1, to be honest with you, because I don't want it to be too intense. I want it to be pretty subtle. It's funny just how the colors sort of change here. Right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to have my darkest color be a red. What kind of red am I looking at here? I'm looking at sort of a ever so slightly pinky red, I think. It should be about here. Because we want this to be bright. This might have a bit of a newsprinty look to it, I'm not sure. We'll see how this looks. This is 5 colors, so put this one here. Put it about there. Then this one should be a lot brighter. This one should be about here-ish, I think. And then this one should be about there. Maybe down about here, a little bit more. Let's have a look. Wait, what? No, right, okay, yeah, I know why that happened. Then this one is now blue, so this should be about here-ish. These are all like kind of aqua blues, I suppose. This one should be about here. Should be about there-ish. Somewhere about here. I think that looks about right. About there. Might bring that down a little bit because it's a little too bright, I think. Same with this. This one I think is a little too bright, a little too dull. My voice is going a little bit, jeez. Right, now this one should also be a blue, but this one should be a lot lighter, so blue. Right up there. Sounds like an aqua blue, so I'll put it about here-ish. Put it about there. And then now our lightest should be green. Let's see this. Let's see how this looks. I'm probably gonna have to put it about here, and then I'll just have to put it up there like that. And we'll see, because obviously we're going off stuff that isn't, there's obviously non-printer colors, so we'll see. I'll probably have to edit that. How does that look an overlay? It's a bit cold. Well, soft light is obviously what we're going to go for here, so let's turn that down to 70%. It's funny, last time I used a green as the lightest color as well. I might actually change that to be a warmer green, so to speak. Bring that down here a bit. How does that look now? How does that go overlay? Convert to normal. See how that looks? That's my... Yeah, no, I think that looks a little bit better as a warmer green, so to speak. I don't know, I keep doing the finger motions here. So that, turn this one down to 60, because we don't want it to be too intense. We don't want it to suck all the warmth out. Right, okay. I think I like that, actually. I think I do like that color palette. Because it makes everything bright, that's for sure. It's funny, just sort of makes it all a little colder than I might have liked, though. So let's see how the luminosity interacts with that. 20%. What, above or below? Below is a little duller. I think we want it above. Above seems a little brighter. Now I'm going to put on a color burn that will make things definitely deeper, not necessarily darker, because we don't have a dark color palette. So that's 5%. It emphasizes that blue at the top a little bit more. Things seem a little less green on this. With the what do you call it, on the color burn on. Yeah, things seem slightly less green. That's with none of them on. That's with all of them on. So yeah, they definitely make a difference. Yeah, things are obviously less green on the screen in front of me. So yeah, what I'm looking at on the page down here is a lot more vivid, obviously, because that's just sort of the nature of these things. But yeah, technically speaking, this has been a pretty quick recording because, you know, I lost the first hour of it. But, you know, in that first hour, I basically made no progress, so I suppose that's not much of a loss, all things considered. So yeah, let me throw this texture on and we'll see how I want this. I'm probably not going to want this to be too crazy. Geez, that took a long time. It's a little concerning. Right, my keyboard isn't fully operational right now. Is Windows Ink on or something? No, that's just... Yeah, no, it's the keyboard is fighting me a little bit here, I think. What is going on here? Weird. The clipping on this seems to be a bit weird. Right, okay, let's turn that to an overlay. That's a little unusual. Right, so... Let's see... 20%? That's 40%, that's obviously too high. 30%, definitely too high. 25, definitely too high. 20 seems reasonable. 20 seems reasonable. Right, that's it on, that's it off. On, off, on, off. Yeah, right, I think I might want to turn that down to 10%. We don't want it to be too crazy. It's a little too visible, I think, on 20. 20 seems like a little too much. Oh yeah, right, okay. It's getting very warm in here, so I'm gonna try and wrap this up. Okay, yeah. It's alright. That's definitely yeah. The texture is a little bit much, I think. I think it's a little intense. It's not too visible now. I think that I turned off one of those accents. Yeah, it's not too visible now. It's not too much of a problem now. 10% I think is enough. We just want enough of it so that we can see that it's there. Because let me have a look at the character. Yeah, it's still there. It's still very visibly there. Because, I mean, the reason why I use the texture is just to sort of get a little bit more brightness out of those tones, because the gradient maps almost always skew a little darker. I find, at least, that they normally skew a little dark, so I try to use the texture to sort of brighten things up a little bit. It also adds a nice little kind of watercolory wash to things, so that it has a bit more of a sort of a nice look to it in the final product. But yeah, that is us, more or less. Yeah, this was a not too bad one, aside from the stress of losing the first hour, I think. Um, yeah, all things considered, that wasn't too bad. Realistically speaking, this was a pretty easy one because, it's a 2.5 hour recording. But, minus the first hour. Even still, this would have been a pretty short one, even with that first hour, because, we would have only been at 3.5 hours, which is a little short, actually, surprisingly. Um, I don't anticipate the next one skewing short because I've got some weird stuff to do next time, but I suppose that is, of course, next time's problem. Um, but yeah. Yeah, I'm having an interesting time, I suppose, with trying out some of these new color palettes because I feel the reason why I'm doing this sort of like newer color palette stuff is because I feel like I've been getting a little stuck in my ways with the color palettes that I've been using. I seem to keep sort of falling back on, this is a cold color palette, this is a warm color palette. I seem to just kind of get stuck in those one of two ways of, do I want this to look cold? Okay, well, I make blue the sort of primary color. Oh, well, do I want this to look warm? We'll have yellow be the primary color. Sort of stuff like that, where I feel like I'm getting a little stuck in those ways. But yeah, I think this is yeah. The green is an interesting touch. I think it's not something I would have normally picked, but I think it contributes to this having a bit more of a unique look to it. And yeah, I suppose that because of the green, that means that the yellow doesn't get washed out too much, but it's obviously something happens to it at the very least. Yeah, yeah. I think I'm alright with that. I think I'm alright to leave that there. This was a fun enough one. But yeah, I will wrap up because I am currently, wiping myself dry. So yeah, anyways, I desperately need to put that fan back on. So, with all that said, that is us. So I'll say my outro and I'll leave you. So, if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking or not. I would of course prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so I won't try. So yeah, it's the same deal if you want to subscribe. You know where the button is. You've seen a YouTube video before, presumably. So it's below the video, and you know that if you hit it, you will be able to see my videos on a regular basis. I mean, not that you can't before, but you'll be notified of them, presumably. But yeah, if you would like to leave a comment, if you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see in the future, you can leave a comment, and then I will see it. But be nice, because I will see it. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. God, I'm gonna have a lot of editing to do with that. That was a weird outro. But yeah. So with all that said, that is us. I'll say goodbye and I'll leave you. So, bye-bye.